been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. We will begin this evening with the pledges of allegiance and then a silent invocation in order to honor those who lost their lives yesterday on 9/11. So if you will all stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. If you'll please remain standing for a silent invocation. You may be seated. Okay, we will start this evening with information items. 4A is a Senate Bill 507 update. Dr. Dupree.
Yes, ma'am. Deanna Saavedra and Dr. Dina Hill are going to present a report on Senate Bill 507 related to cameras in special education classrooms. Dina?
Good evening. Good evening, President Tassin and the board. Wanted to give you an update today about SB 507. So if you recall, SB 507 is a mandate to install video equipment, including video cameras with audio recording capabilities in special education classrooms on request. It goes into effect during the 16-17 school year, or at the beginning of the 16-17 school year. So what is a request? A request can be made from a parent, a trustee, or a staff member. And each request is reviewed on a case-by-case analysis to determine if it meets the requirement. What is the requirement? It's a self-contained classroom where the majority of students in regular attendance receive special education services and related services and are assigned for at least 50% of the instructional day. So, and let me just go back and say, so that is part of the analysis. So when you get the request, you have to consider the student's last ARD, consider their placement, how often they're in that classroom, and then possibly consider all the other students in that classroom to see if the majority of the students spend 50% or more in that classroom during the day. What is the time of the recording? So the recording will occur during the instructional day when students are present, during the regular school year in classrooms, and in extended school year services. And if you recall, originally when the bill came out, we did not have guidance from the rules. We just got the rules, I guess, I don't know, about a month ago, right before school started. And in the rules, there was clarification that extended school year services was part of the requirement for the cameras to follow the student. So that was new for us as part of the clarification when the rules came out. What equipment is required? So we have audio from all areas of the classroom setting and video from all areas of the classroom or setting, except we do not have video inside of a bathroom or in an area which students' clothes are changed. So in many of our classrooms where we have some of these specialized classrooms, we may have two classrooms with a connecting kitchen for vocational areas and maybe a bathroom. So in those cases, all of those areas would be covered with the video and audio, with the exception of the bathroom. Is notice required? So we have to provide written notice to the affected staff and parents of a student receiving services in this classroom setting. The notice is required before the surveillance begins. No consent is required from parents or staff members, and there's no opt-out. Will the district post signage outside of the classrooms? And this is not a requirement, it's an option. And in Fort Bend, in our procedures, we've decided that we will. So in addition to the written notice that the parents and the staff will receive, we will also have signage posted outside of the classroom areas. And I guess I can come back to this in a second, because I don't know how to get to that. Is the pointer
In terms of
to like get on that website? Yeah.
I think
Oh, here we go, Jane. Thank you. Would you mind clicking on there? Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can go there in a second. Okay. So when can the recording be accessed or used? Only in connection with a complaint or an investigation. Only to specific individuals under certain conditions. The recording is confidential by law. It may not be used for teacher evaluation or for any purposes other than the promotion of student safety. So thinking about those specific individuals under certain condition, there's a great deal of protection found within this rule and in the guidance and the guidelines that you have received a copy, as well as the guidelines are posted on our website in the special ed section, and I'll show you that at the end of this presentation where you can find that. But it really clarifies the specific individuals who have access to the recording, and also we will be coming to you in the month of October to review, because the board has to make a decision about the HR representative who will be assigned from the district to also be part of the process to review the recordings if there's a complaint or an investigation. What are the retention requirements for the video? We will retain the videos for 7 months. The retention requirements are 6 months, but because of that, the video will be automatically deleted. We've added that 7th month just to be careful and just to be safe. But after the 7 months, the video will automatically be deleted unless the video is part of an ongoing investigation. How will the district respond to an allegation? So we have our procedures posted. They're in detailed information on the requirements for responding to an allegation, and I'm going to show you those in a second. If an allegation of abuse is reported, that reporting goes to me, the Executive Director of Special Education, and I will follow the SB 507 procedures. At the same time, that incident will be reported to HR, and HR will follow the typical local procedures that are followed whenever there is some type of allegation of this nature. So both of the procedures are being implemented kind of in a parallel manner, and there may be interaction between the two groups, but certainly this does not take the place of our local requirements regarding the investigation process. As how many requests have been received? As of September 8th, we've had 6 requests so far. And how will the district keep the board informed of the SB 507 implementation? Within the procedures found, there is a monthly reporting requirement that will go to the superintendent. And so that reporting requirement includes information on the campus and the classrooms where the cameras are requested, the outcome of that request, whether it was approved or declined, the status of the installation process for each request, and then the status when surveillance equipment is operational. And here's the link to the special ed website. There we go. So if we just go down a little bit, you can see some general information there. Then you see the helpful documents. So the first document there is the procedures, actually, and you have a copy of that. I don't think we need to open that one. The next one, the SB 507 request flowchart, I think that's a helpful document. If you can click on that one, you should have a copy of that as well. And that one just is a good visual of the process of request. And it goes through, from when the parent requested, from using the website and the forms noted in the procedures, all the way through determining whether it's eligible or not, and then the whole process into the actual video surveillance begins. So that's just a good visual for parents to reference. And then all the forms are listed there, and so they're very specific. And then one thing I just want to make clear is that, if a principal emails me or calls me or says a parent has requested a video, I will contact the parent and walk them through the process. It's not, we're trying to be helpful because it is a new procedure, and we want to make sure parents understand where they go to begin the process. Any questions? I think that that's a good summary of where we are right now.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Appreciate that. Do we have questions from the trustees? Ms. Helliger.
Just a couple. When you go back to slide 5, where it says, in order for us to have surveillance, it has to be in a classroom that's assigned for at least 50% of the instructional day. So it's the students are there for 50% of the day?
Yes.
So how does this impact our students that we're really trying to make sure that they, what's the word I'm looking for, that they are assimilated?
Inclusion?
Included.
Mm-hmm.
So probably a good thing for you to do is describe for the trustees which classrooms in Fort Bend ISD this affects and which classrooms it does not. Would that be helpful?
That would be helpful.
Okay, so typically some of our specialized programs, such as what we were referring to as life skills, we now have a new name for that called SAILS. But life skills are classrooms for students with significant behavior concerns. We've called those BIC in the past, so you may be familiar with those. We also have classrooms for more of our medically fragile students. Our name for that is called FLIGHT. And then we have classrooms for students with more significant developmental delays and autism, ABC. PPCD, which is for our 3 to 5 year old students, so those are our typically self-contained programs. The other thing, though, that in Fort Bend particularly, what we're seeing is we do have a lot of classrooms where we have resource classrooms, where we have kids that spend a great amount of time in resource and meet the 50% cutoff. And so we are seeing in these requests, I believe the 6 requests we have right now, 3, I believe, are actually resource classrooms. Now, your question about how will it affect students that are being served in an inclusive environment? Well, if they were in the life skills classroom, for example, for that 50% or more amount of time, then the camera would be in that life skills classroom. So if they went out to the general ed classroom to an elective, or maybe even a core content area for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, that they still may be able to have the camera in the classroom based on the amount of time that they spend in the special ed setting versus the general ed setting. But if they're in the life skills classroom for an hour and that's it, and the rest of the day they're served in the general education environment, then that request would be denied because they don't spend the majority of their day, that more than 50% of their day, in the life skills class.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be interested to look at more of this policy. I think I have further questions on that. And then my last question will be, the retention is only 7 months, and so we have a 9-month school year. Why would we not retain the video for at least the 9 months of our school year?
Well, I think the 7 months is actually more than the requirement by law of 6 months, and so the 9 months is not something that we had considered, but it's certainly something we can bring back to the committee and discuss, discuss that.
Yeah, I would like for you all to reconsider that, because
Okay.
if we've got a concern with the parent or whatnot, and there's an investigation, especially within that particular school year, if something, starts, if there's a complaint that happens maybe, let's say, August or something like that, the parent's concerned, but they might blow it off, that kind of thing, and then it might happen, something, if something happens again, I think we need to see the whole picture for the 9 months.
Okay.
That was my recommendation, but there's 6 other trustees here.
Okay, and we've been meeting, we've probably been meeting about this bill for at least 8 months, I think. So with a small group from many representatives throughout the district. So we'll certainly go back and talk about that and see what, the final recommendation is.
Okay, I would recommend that we do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Helliger. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. A very nice presentation. I think this is a very good process, but I want to ask you a question. This is Senate Bill 507. Is the state funding us for any of these cameras and surveillance and all that stuff? Or are we coming up with that money out of pocket?
No, it is an unfunded mandate from the state. There, in the bill, there's some mention of opportunities of grants or raising money through different foundations, but there's certainly not any money coming from the state for this bill.
Okay. So, Mrs. Tasson, while I agree that this is a needed thing, to me this is an example of a creeping unfunded mandate that is put on the backs of school districts, that we have to come up with funding for this. Not that we shouldn't, but this is one example of many things that get added to us. But thank you very much, Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, for mentioning that, and thank you, Dr. Hill, for your presentation. I agree, Mr. Rice, that it is concerning that we're required by state law to provide something, but we have we have to cut something else in our budget in order to be able to provide the funds. So, as we discussed previously this evening, we're already very efficient with our money, and so it is a concern. I'm sure we'll have a chance to mention this to our state legislators in the upcoming session. I have a question also. Dr. Hill, you referred at one point to the people that had access, I think, to this video, and it was do we have a slide on that? Was there, you kind of rattled it off that it was the parent,
Actually, that was for the request, but the access comes,
okay.
there wasn't a slide on the specific access, it's actually in the procedure.
Okay.
But the persons, and if you have a copy of your procedures, I can reference that as we talk through it.
So I guess my point is this video is not available to the public. It's not available to just people that are interested in what's going on in a particular classroom based on rumor or anything like that. It's not an open records request option or anything like that.
Exactly. It's very protected. The persons that have access to it, if you're involved in an allegation of abuse and you're a staff member in that classroom and you're the target of the allegation, certainly you can have access to view. The parent can have access to view. And then the persons that would be reviewing it to determine if there was an abusive situation, there's some specific persons identified in the law. One is, again, we talked about the board designated HR representative. There's also a district staff member trained in the crisis prevention, de-escalation techniques, and in our district we use CPI. So in our special education department, we have several district trainers who train on CPI, so they would be someone available to view the video to help determine if this was an abusive situation. Then we have a nurse is in there as well.
Maybe a police officer.
The
So-
the
okay,
police
so-
officer.
So the
Yes,
list is
right.
in there, so
Mhm,
thank you
on
for
page
that.
10,
But then
yeah.
the board will be designating somebody from Human Resources that would be, I guess, so the point would be to be an observer for the employee whose classroom that the video is taken in.
They may be called in to help as part of the investigation to view the video to determine next steps. I want to say that, you know, it's clear from the law, the principal, the campus administrator, is not part of that process. And so I think some of that goes back to that protection, that this is a highly protected video, and it's not used for, again, any kind of teacher evaluation or any monitoring. Parents aren't allowed to ask for copies to see if their students are, or to view it, to see if their students are making progress or if they're concerned with the methodology in the class. I mean, it's very much designed to protect those students that are unable to speak for themselves. And I wanted to just say one last thing is that I know it is an unfunded mandate and it's a difficult process to get going. You know, there's a lot of details that we don't know how things are going to play out. But in a year from now, you know, this will all be worked out. And the spirit of this law is good. I mean, these are our most vulnerable students in the school district, and they don't have a voice. Often the kids in these classrooms are nonverbal. They have such significant emotional problems that when they do say things, sometimes people don't believe them. And so I think it's good for not only our children, but for our staff who sometimes are falsely accused of situations. So I think if we can just get through the next year of kind of figuring out how it all works, it's going to end up being a really good thing for our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. So I had a couple of questions and then a couple of comments. So I agree with Mr. Rice and Mrs. James that this is yet another unfunded mandate that we have to come up with the money to implement. I agree with you that it's worthy. In fact, I testified for this bill. I was intimately involved in writing this bill because of personal experience of my daughter being abused in a classroom that was actually not a special education environment that's described here, but was a regular education environment, and we still had administrators that did not believe her, and it took other people standing up for her in order for anything to be done. So I think that this is a bill, this is a law that is badly needed because there are many children that can't speak for themselves, and even my daughter who could wasn't listened to, at least not initially. So I support the bill, but I don't support the state not providing funds for the bill. And we will, in fact, be able to speak up about that because we have a local representative, Representative Rick Miller, who is on the Appropriations Committee and who has agreed to carry the rider to fund this bill next session. So we can all pick up the phones and call him and tell him that we support that. Our district alone, I think Mr. Bassett estimated somewhere around $4 million for the initial implementation, and then close to $1 million every year after that. Somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. So it's not inexpensive. And Ms. Helliger, you know, I agree with you about wanting to retain the video for as long as we possibly can. I'll tell you the reason it was cut at 6 months was because of the cost of video retention. It escalates each month that you retain. So I would be interested in seeing what the cost analysis is on that. That was sort of why it actually came down from 3 years to 1 year to 6 months after some cost analysis was presented to the committees that heard the bill. But I would be interested, if we're going to go for 7 months, what the cost difference would be. So when you guys talk about that and present that information to us, that's additional information I would like to see. My questions are only, first of all, you talked about the special education setting and, you know, the disqualification of a student that doesn't spend more than 50% of their day in that setting. So my question for you is that if, I believe that the requirement is that the majority of the students spend 50% or more of their day in that classroom. So just having the one student in there that does not spend more than 50% of their day in that classroom, does that disqualify a request
Well,
under the
stu-
law, under the procedures we have?
So the first thing we look at is the students, the state has the student accounting handbook that gives you an instructional setting. So that instructional setting is the first thing we look at, because the instructional setting for a student, or the instructional arrangement, sometimes people refer to it as that, is based on the amount of time a student spends in general ed versus special ed. So, for example, students either have a 40, 43, or 44. So they have to have that number first.
Right.
Then you go and you look at, like, let's pretend there's 10 students in the class. Of those 10 students, do they have a 43 or a 44? And so if, at least, 5 or more are in, have a 43 or 44, then check, it's approved. But if of those 10 students, only 2 of them are, have a 43 or 44, then that would not be considered a classroom where the video would be required.
So what I want to be careful of as a district, in this district, is that we don't start placing children in the classrooms that would disqualify the classroom if a parent makes a request. And so I view that as a loophole. I guess that districts could use that to get around, and I just want, I want the message to our schools to be that I don't want to play this shell game where we're putting students in that class to automatically disqualify them from placement of cameras. The purpose of this bill is to protect our most vulnerable. And while we have many, many admirable teachers and paraprofessionals and aides, many of whom I have come into contact with, it's always the one, the one that we want to be careful of. So I just want to put that out there, that I don't believe it is the spirit of this law, and I don't believe it is the intent of this board that we would want to see that happening in our schools. My last question is, do we need to adopt, other than designation of the representative that can view the video, do we need to adopt any policy around this?
Mr. Nichols is here. Do you want to talk about that?
I can just real briefly. So,
If you'll step to the microphone, please, sir.
hello.
Yes.
So, just real briefly, you've already adopted one policy earlier in February of this year. That was the initial policy regarding that. But now that TEA regs have actually come out, TASB has promulgated their revision to that. Currently, my group is actually, for a lot of districts, modifying TASBs. And so, as I mentioned to Mr. Morris when I walked in earlier today, I'm going to be sending that over so y'all can take a look at it and start the read process of going through it. We should be finished with them on the initial go-round in the next week.
Okay.
But other than that, there wouldn't be any other policy that the board would have to adopt in regard to this bill.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
Ms. Saavedra. All right, next information item, employee benefits update.
Yes, ma'am. We, as you know, we provided you some advanced materials on the employee benefit recommended changes for the next year, calendar year, and Steve's going to provide us an update on this information tonight.
Thank you, sir. One of the slides in there is a bit of an eye chart, so we're passing around one of the a full page so that when we get to it, you can actually read it. So I think that'll be very helpful for you. Okay, so on the benefits side, we certainly have our challenges. So we'll get into this. The plan performance for this past year wasn't very good. We lost $6.2 million in the health fund this past year. While we had certainly a lot of claims, we don't have as much from a catastrophic. Some of the catastrophic cases that we've had many that are just underneath that threshold of $450,000. We are not, while we're fully insured from we're self-insured, so we are the insurance company, but whenever we have a catastrophic claim that goes over $450,000, we do have that stop loss, and we do have United Healthcare kicking that in. But when you have a lot of claims that are in the 300,000, 400,000 range and whatever else, we're pretty much absorbing that. But we did experience a loss this year, and we haven't gotten off to a good start in the 16-17 year. If you just look at the January through July, that's a loss of $4 million. But again, July is always a heavy claim month. But you can see when you just look at from a calendar year perspective. And so we had a lot of frank discussions with the benefits committee, and we put together a lot of strategies that we've talked about some of them with you, and then we're going to update you a little bit on those in addition to some of the other strategies we've had to put into place. So I'm going to go through the plan changes and deductible changes on the next slide, and so we'll get into that. But the savings from that could be as high as $1.2 million by making that change. We are eliminating the out-of-network options for a couple of the plans, and that is in line with some of the other school districts that are out there. But frankly, what we've seen in the market is that when folks are going out of network, for some of the providers, what the providers are doing, they're playing the game where they're saying, okay, we're going to act like we're in network in terms of what they charge the member, but then they're charging the plan the full amount. And so we estimate we'll be able to save as much as over $1.5 million by taking out the out-of-network option. Again, Katie's doing that already. Cy-Fair, it's something that is common in industry in terms of not having out-of-network options. Our total utilization from United Healthcare's perspective is over 95%. I mean, we have a massive network, a broad network. We wouldn't have been able to do this if we'd had Cigna, because again, Cigna's out-of-network expenses were closer to 20%. Cigna network wasn't broad in the Southwest Houston area, but United is, and so that's why we have that in here. We have minor change on the prescription drug with regard to some of the grandfathered drugs for the Cigna plan, $150,000. One of the plans that you'll see is we added a fifth medical plan to keep us compliant with the Affordable Care Act, and you can see that on the one pager that we'll have here in a minute, and I'll talk about that in a second. One of the things that we don't have an estimate on, but we're hopeful that will have a significant impact on the plan, especially with the opening of the new Kelsey Center over there by Lake Olympia. You may have seen it on Highway 6. Is hopefully we'll see some folks migrate more into the Kelsey plan. We anticipate the folks that will go in there on average are saving about $1,500 per person in terms of plan participant because of how they manage their care. And so hopefully we'll be able to save some, and we're going to have an incentive to get folks into that plan. So again, don't look at that because I know you can't read it. So look at the single page. Does everybody have this single page? Okay. So what you see in red are the differences from last year. So those are the changes. So the first plan there, the Choice Plus PPO, we're changing the individual deductible up from $1,250 to $1,500. So that's one example of the change, and you can see how those play out in the other plans. Some of the other changes that were made. So surgery performed in a doctor's office. So before, what you'd have is that somebody would just pay a $30 copay. They wouldn't pay any additional amount. If they had that surgery somewhere else, they would pay deductible and coinsurance. And so what we're doing is that we're saying that if you have the surgery in the doctor's office, and I'm talking minor procedures and such, your deductible and your coinsurance would apply as if you had gone to another facility. Okay, which is another common change we've seen elsewhere. We do have just one copay change in the Tier 1 plan, and then also on so that's on the primary care and the specialist. And that's also really to give us a differentiation between that Tier 1 plan and then the Kelsey plan. You can see over on the far right, the fourth plan there. The only thing that's new about the Kelsey plan, and we don't have that many folks in it. We have just under 200 folks that are in that plan. Part of the reason why we didn't have a lot of adoption in this past year is because we didn't have changes to the rest of the plans. When you don't have changes in your plans, a lot of people just don't even go in and enroll. They just stick with what they had before. But we're hopeful with some of these changes besides some of the money that we're saving, that will move some folks into the Kelsey plan. And over on the right, the far right is the high deductible plan. That's the one that meets the parameters of the Affordable Care Act. The premium that folks will be paying, that is the cheapest plan. And so some folks may do that because it is the cheapest plan, but it is the one that does have the highest deductible. And so it is more of a catastrophic care plan. Okay. Some of the other changes that we're implementing, the elimination of teledoc, we're not seeing high utilization there, but we have an option through United Healthcare already. We are consolidating, and the board has already approved this, the dental, vision, and life to the guardian carrier. One of the things that we're still talking to the benefits committee about, and the decision we're going to talk with them about tomorrow, is whether or not we would go with having the nurse coaching done through United Healthcare as opposed through MHBT, our partner. So if we did that, we'd have some savings of $300,000. United Healthcare is going to be presenting to the benefits committee tomorrow, and we'll be talking about the pros and cons of a potential change there. One thing that is added is this additional change in RX prescription pricing that'll help us to the tune of $1.5 million. This is something that is new within the past couple of months that MHBT brought to our attention based on some work they were doing with other districts and other districts and other companies that they support, is that they've seen a decrease in some of the pricings if you're aggressive on your pricing for prescriptions. And so we've talked with United Healthcare about that, and without us costing any and with having very little disruption, we'd be able to save $1.5 million. We can save an additional $500,000 if we are willing to tolerate a little bit more disruption. That's one of the things we're going to talk to our benefits committee about tomorrow, to get a feel from them on whether or not we think that disruption is worth the $500,000. Some of the other things that we're looking at, some of our, typically our spouse claims are higher than the member claims. And so what we want to do is add a spousal surcharge for spouses that have access to other plans. So if a spouse has access to another plan, but they choose not to do that, they choose to go with our plan, we would ask for the spousal surcharge. If a spouse does not have access to another plan, the spousal surcharge would not apply. But this is something that is common elsewhere in the industry. The non-wellness penalty is something we already have. We're looking at changing that from $40 a month to $50 a month for someone who fails to go through the biometric screening and the health assessment. And so that $40 a month has been in place, I think, the past 5 years. And so we're looking to move that up from $40 to $50. The nurse coaching penalty, this is another thing we'll talk to the benefits committee about. So what the benefits committee did not want to do in the 2016 year that we're still in right now is we didn't want to make the nurse coaching mandatory. If somebody had all of the risk indicators, coverage gaps and such, we didn't make it mandatory that they participate in the nurse coaching program. How do you make it mandatory? Well, the only way to make it mandatory is to add on that non-wellness penalty. If they weren't going to participate, but we felt like they were at risk. When I say we, our district isn't looking at this information because of HIPAA laws. We can't see the health insurance information, the healthcare information for our employees. But our outside providers, United Healthcare, MHBT, they have the access to that. If somebody is not participating when they think that they should, what we'd be talking about with the benefits committee is having a monthly penalty if they're going to choose to not be engaged. So that would be $50. And then the other one, finally on the diabetic surcharge, one of the biggest drivers of our expenses overall is just the number of diabetic folks that we have. I mean, the diabetic members and their family members that are diabetic, it's very complicated care. More of our catastrophic claims come from folks who have that. And so we have mechanisms in place to try to get the care to them. And so if somebody is labeled as a diabetic, we want to be able to give some special programs to them. If they choose to not participate, then that would be a $200 charge. So those are some of the things we've been talking about with the benefits committee. There's been consensus for pretty much everything we've talked about. No, nobody's happy about these things. I mean, make no mistake, nobody's happy about these things. But the benefits committee, the last thing they wanted to do, especially in a year that we weren't giving raises, was to increase the premiums across the board. And so, you know, it was a time where we really did have to make some difficult choices. And again, these were interesting, emotionally charged meetings, and there's pretty much we always have those with the benefits committee, and we'll have another one of those tomorrow. So in the benefits committee tomorrow, what we'll talk about is, you know, trying to finalize a nurse coaching strategy that's both whether or not we do make it mandatory and whether or not we do it through MHBT or through United Healthcare. And so that'll be something we're talking about with them, as well as the potential changes in the RX, in the prescription plan, and any potential disruption, if that's worth the additional $500,000 that we could save. And so we'll be showing the benefits committee the drugs that are being used, and so they fully can understand what that disruption would mean. I honestly think that if you look at the middle bullets, I think this is where we could really save the most money, and that's just educating our members and their dependents on the plan itself, just reminding everybody over and over again that it's a self-funded plan, that we are the insurance company. You know, that when a member chooses to not shop around, or when they choose to go to emergency room when maybe they could have gone to their primary care doctor, those are things that directly impact the district and not United Healthcare. United Healthcare just processes our claims. And so we are going to really work on member education, and I'm hoping that has the biggest impact above and beyond some of the things we've outlined. So again, just reminding folks that we are the insurance plan and encouraging shopping and cost comparisons. One of the mechanisms that we'll do on that, we talked about that telephone app that we had before. We're actually, you know, not going to use the Engaged app. We did discontinue that, as we told the board, but we're going to be promoting the use of the United Healthcare app. I mean, they have a very good app that has good information for our members and dependents, that they'll be able to do cost comparisons, you know, with their phones, and so hopefully that'll be able to use. Folks will be able to use that. We've had a good meeting with our consultant today, and we're, you know, reevaluating, you know, that contract, whether or not we'd go out there. And so then another just new strategy is something that I got a couple more slides on, and that's a real appeal. So that's a kind of a lifestyle intervention experience. They do it with a lot of marketing, and I'll show you with a couple of slides here. But what United Healthcare is something that they've promoted, and they've gotten a lot of their fully insured clients involved. But they liked it so much that they're doing it for their own employees. And so the CFO, Dave Millich, he's actually engaged in Real Appeal himself, and he's talked to me quite a bit about that. And so I'm not going to read this slide to you, but what you see is, folks would be invited to enroll, and there's an enrollment process that they go through, and things are personalized and customized. You get folks hooked up with members with similar issues, similar demographics, and then there's a kit that they would send out to them, and then there's ongoing coaching and tools that are available. But where this has been implemented in the past has had some pretty good results. And so one of the things on here, you can see what some of the costs would be to us, but the important number down is below what they have documented for their return on investment is very favorable. And so this is something we're going to be implementing, and we'll have a presentation on this with the benefits committee again tomorrow. That's a picture of the kit, so you can see people actually get a blender, and there's other things and a lot of information for them to use on the Real Appeal side. So I know I went through that. Be happy to take any questions. Again, it's been a difficult year, but hopefully the strategies we've outlined will be able to improve the picture for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Do we have questions from the trustees? Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Just a quick question. On page 2, we have July 2015 through June of 16, our health plan performance. That's for the fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
So that lost $6.2 million.
Right.
And then what is the difference? then on page 3, that's for 6 months or 7 months.
Yeah, so that's just the current plan year, 2016.
So in 7 months, we've lost 4, so we're on our way to losing
Right now, I
more.
mean, it's going to be a tough year, the way things are looking.
Okay. So, and then did I understand from the proposals that you've been discussing, I added it up, it looks like about 4.4 million in reduction. Okay.
Yeah, and so there's several things in there, though, that we just don't know what the impact would be. I think that the Kelsey is one of the things
Right.
that we're very optimistic on.
Right.
You know, again, the programs like Real Appeal, but again, just member education. I think that that's going to have the single biggest
Yeah.
impact.
I think you're right, and thank you for having these difficult meetings and that impact our employees, our teachers and staff and everyone. And just wish you continued success in wrestling these costs down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Ms. Hilliger?
No, thank you. Couple questions. One, the cost reductions that you've shown in the plan is based on these increased deductibles?
That's part of it, the 1.1 million,
Okay, because, initially when I saw this, my concern was the increase in the deductibles and how it impacts our employees and staff members, especially for, it's one thing if you just, going for normal, checkups and you're fairly healthy, but you've got, and I don't know the statistics, but I know increased number of people who have experiencing health concerns with cancer, transplants, those kinds of things. And if you look at the plan itself, it talks about the cost, of $1,500, $3,000, but then we're only paying 80% after the deductible, correct? So there's still that 20% that they have to pay themselves, along with the increased amount of initial deductible. So that's definitely a concern of mine. I would like to know what's the percentage of our employees and staff members who are enrolled in each one of these particular plans?
that's something I can provide to the board.
Okay. If you could get that, and that would be very helpful for me to kind of understand, kind of where we're going, because these are pretty large numbers when it comes
Sure.
to deductibles.
Yes, ma'am.
Deductibles. And then, and just on a lighter note, to make light of this situation a little bit, Kristen and I wanted to know, is this us? This is like you are here, and then you follow this path, you can get to here. Just a little light joke. Wish we could get this kit. Okay.
No,
Thanks.
so I mean, just to address some of your concerns, whenever we talked about the plan changes and the red marks in here, we did show the benefits committee the layout of the plans for other districts, and so we're not out of line in comparison to industry and other districts when you think about what these deductibles and all are. I mean, it's my hope, because of the changes in those other plans, going up from a lot of these deductible changes are $500 on the family basis, that it will move folks into the Kelsey plan, because we didn't change those, and so we'll have to see. But those were definitely some of the tough things, tough decisions that we talked with the benefits committee about.
Thank you, Ms. Hilliger. Mrs. James? Sorry, I
That's all
saw
right.
your green light.
I know, it's
That's
on.
green
it's
means
on.
go.
Green means go. Awesome. Thank you, Mrs. Toussaint, for calling on me. Okay, I was trying to understand the, kind of going along the line Mr. Rice was asking about, the total deficit for the fiscal year,
Yeah, that's the fiscal year view.
okay, right, so that's the fiscal year view. And you made a comment in a memo or something that you wrote to us that there remained a fund balance despite the fund deficit, because that's a pretty significant fund deficit. So could you explain that just a bit?
Sure. The fund balance that we have in the plan now is $6 million left over from this last loss. We have over $6 million in fund balance. What we'll probably need to do is look and see if there's some additional fund balance in workers' comp, some of the other funds that we have. We may potentially need to transfer some of those over here, depending on how the rest of the year plays out. Okay, and if that's something that we're going to suggest, we'll bring that to you. But the distressing part about our plan is that, and I hear this, from the committee, well, can't the district just pay more? Okay, I mean, that's something I hear a lot, and so our contribution per employee per month is $482. Okay, so to give you some perspective, Katie's at $385. That's almost $100 less per employee per month. Aldine's less than that, $330. Conroe is up there; it's $428, but it's still $50, $60 less. Okay, Pasadena's $245 per employee per month. Cy-Fair is actually depends. They have different levels depending on what an employee picks. If it's employee only or spouse or family, and so their contribution ranges to $225 up to $494. But the $494 is only when an employee picks employee and family, and so the average is still well below how much we're paying. And so I'm very reluctant to recommend an increase from the general fund on an ongoing basis. A balance transfer on fund balance from another fund like workers' comp, maybe that's one thing, but an ongoing increase to the general fund, I'm really reluctant to bring to the board based on that, how much is being spent already in comparison to other districts.
Right, so that was kind of what my point was gonna be, is that if we're operating at a pretty big loss, and that money has to come from somewhere, and it's basically coming from the general fund when you go back to its source. And so that's money that's not going into our classrooms, it's not going to pay our teachers or our employees. So I really liked your comment about educating people that this really is a self-funded plan, and when they don't shop around, what happens is that it's money that we aren't using in the education of the students, or that we aren't paying them, essentially. So thank you for that explanation. And then Mr. Rice summed up, I think, the total amount of the cost savings. What was he estimated?
Yeah,
4.3,
4.4.
Okay, and then you think it's not quite.
It's not quite enough to just match up to that deficit amount, but some of the other changes that frankly, we'd just be guessing on what that'd be. I don't know how many folks are going to go to the Kelsey plan, but what we've seen in the spending per enrollee is a $1,500 savings. And so if we had a sizable migration to that plan, that would make a big difference. We know that they have additional capacity given the opening of that clinic over there off Highway 6. They did just open another one on the north side of our district, very close to Bush High School, and so they do have capacity to take more members. They're anxious to see those numbers of what we have enrolled in the Kelsey plan go up.
Okay, and then will we be getting another update on this before our final decision? And what's the timeline for that?
We can certainly bring information as we go. I mean, this is honestly, this is more of an informational briefing. I mean, we're not asking the board for a decision on this. This is
okay.
how we're managing the plan. Where the board really comes in is whenever if we bring vendors to you that we have to have approval on, which we don't have any now, or if we're going to ask to change the general fund contribution, the board certainly has to approve that. But this is just part of our effort to explain to you something that's very important to the district and critical to the board and critical to the employees and the overall budget aspect of the district, how the health fund's doing.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing us this information. I guess my comment would be, I'm still concerned if we're going to continue to be operating at a deficit. Sure. That's not where I'd like to be. But by the same token, I would not recommend or be interested in recommending a premium increase for the employees, because that doesn't seem fair in a year that we haven't given them a raise. So I understand the balance that we're trying to make here.
Yes, ma'am.
But I'm concerned when I see numbers in the red that are in the $6 million for a
Sure,
fiscal year.
as am I.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mr. George?
Yeah, I do share the same concerns. My fellow trustees were expressing, but I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. One is, you said we are going to, if the spouse have access to another plan, how do you figure that out?
That's something we ask them about, and we, hopefully disclose that. We are doing a benefit audit, a dependent audit, excuse me. That's one of the things that was recommended, and so we are going to be doing a dependent audit. But frankly, one of the things that somebody risks if they say that they don't have access to that, and they enroll in the plan, if there's significant charges associated with that, we could see that, and so that's not being honest with the district. It could certainly result in.
So more like good faith.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And one thing I personally use for Ben ISD's plan as a spouse, and one thing I didn't know a long time, it is a self-funded plan until I came in here. And I don't think many of our employees know it is a self-funded plan. And you mentioned already about educating them about it. And because of the name United Healthcare, people think it is an insurance company. And I don't know, again, this is my experience I'm saying. And as a beneficiary, I never knew. It was, okay, you need to shop around, it is a self-funded plan. And that I think we need to take it a very aggressive educational plan to let people know that if you don't shop around, we are going to be paying more, and it's your plan kind of thing. And that's, I'm sharing my personal experience.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I appreciate this tool you are providing. And also, do we promote any kind of preventive medication in the sense?
Well, the one thing we do from a preventive perspective is that, for the annual physicals and things like that, we don't charge. So we encourage our employees to, stay healthy, see their doctor on an annual basis, and stay engaged with their provider that way. Right. And then also people can use that as the biometric screening. You don't have to do it at the campus. If you go to your doctor, you can use the information from your annual physical to cover, the biometric screening requirements. And so we definitely encourage preventative care.
And also in the past, I know it is maybe something hard to do, but I remember another insurance company, Oxford, used to ask us to go to the gym when you go get a paper signed, like some kind of monthly, so many times you have to go to the gym and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know it is not an easy thing to do, but that all can make a difference. And, so promoting a healthy living. And I don't know, do we have any program, anything to promote healthy living?
Well, we have a wellness plan in place, and we do have employees that are dedicated to that. And, we've had boot camps this past year that folks, I've participated in that. They've had class at Mercer, where we'd go and we'd actually work out there. And so
Sure.
we have those things in place. I think one of the things that Dr. Dupree brought to the district when he arrived and I implemented when I got here was the benefits committee. The concept of most districts have a benefits committee, but it's usually just a few people. Okay, we have a benefits committee that includes somebody from every campus and every department. And so what I think I was hopeful that benefits committee, that person would be more active in terms of educating their coworkers and all, but I don't think that's happening to the full extent that we really need.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the gaps, and we will be aggressive, as you mentioned.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's good information. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. George. Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes. Thank you, Steve. As far as the education process goes, until we have enough people on that high deductible plan, it's going to be an uphill battle. That's the only time you're going to, when people see how much things really cost. And that's the time, that's when they're gonna shop around, okay? And until we get pretty much everybody on that plan, these costs are gonna keep going up and up and up, because that's just the new reality, okay? It's going up for everybody in this country, everybody who works. And I know you know that. As far as looking at the costs here, on a relative basis, these are actually pretty good prices, you know, compared to several other local school districts, as you pointed out some of them, and I know that to be true. And so I really can't see us making any further contributions, you know, increasing those contributions. You know, I think we're probably doing as much as possible. And I'm very sensitive to the cost on our, especially our teachers. Trust me. But those deficits, I mean, that, like Ms. James said, that's got to come from somewhere. And if it's coming right out of the classrooms, because this is coming right out of the operating budget. So, you know, I think, to me, the best strategy is really to push as many people into that high deductible plan. So, because that's
Well, one of the things that'll be
good.
what I see happening in 17 is whenever when we're planning for 2018, if we do have premium increases, what we'll be doing is doing things to strategically, you know, move folks, and so, you know, we'll have those kinds of discussions with the benefits committee as the year progresses. When we see how the claims are doing, you'll see what the impact is of our education plans. But we'll, you know, we will have some plans that'll have increases, maybe some that have none, because we're trying to encourage folks to move.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bassett. We appreciate your presentation. We appreciate your time in putting that together and work on the benefits committee. The board will now convene in closed session under the Texas Open Meetings Act for purposes of private consultation with the board's attorney and any and all subject or matters authorized by law, as well as personnel matters that are listed. The board is now convened in closed session.